Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another weather forecast here by Age of the Forecast. This will be a severe weather update, actually, not a tropical update. So this is going to be mostly for the Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes. We will definitely be seeing quite the severe weather for parts of tomorrow and also for parts on the day 3 outlook. But tomorrow seems to be the most severe with an enhanced risk for millions of people out there in the Midwest. So and today, in this video, we're going to be checking out the timing, where the worst of it can be, whether we'll be seeing tornadoes, hail, or some strong wind gusts. We're going to be checking all that out. And of course, we're going to be seeing exactly the areas that could possibly maybe be added into an enhanced risk tomorrow. So be sure to stay tuned for the whole video so you are weather aware of the severe weather. Also, be sure to share the video to anybody that you know will be in the severe weather that is not aware of it, or that has not had the new SPC outlook or anything like that. And also, if you're new to the channel yourself, be sure to hit the subscribe button and post notification icon so you're notified as soon as I post a daily update. But without further ado, let's get in this the severe weather update. So guys, here we are looking at the SPC outlook here for day 2. They just updated this a couple minutes ago now, and as you see, we do have an enhanced risk as our highest risk here for parts of the Midwest. If you guys are wondering whether we can have a moderate risk, I do not see that. I don't see really a good chance of having a moderate. I mean, I can't rule out the possibility, but it's very low happening. But of course, that's why I'm actually making this video, and that's exactly why I'm checking the SPC outlook and all the other new maps and all of that every single day for almost every single hour. But here we have an enhanced risk now for parts of central and western Wisconsin, generally southern Minnesota, far eastern South Dakota, and far northern Iowa. So we do have a good amount of states here in the Midwest, but as you see, Minneapolis, parts of St. Paul, you guys are right on the border with a slight enhanced risk. So you guys are still going to be seeing kind of the really strong severe weather. You can't rule out the possibility. We also, of course, have areas like Wisconsin Dells, also including Rochester, and as far east as the border with, as far west as the Minnesota and South Dakota border. So that is exactly where we have an enhanced risk for the worst of the severe weather. I would not doubt if we actually have this enhanced risk moving more into Iowa, a bit more into Iowa, but that's really, I agree with the SPC here. Also, we have the slight risk all the way from Nebraska to parts of Michigan. So we do have a very widespread slight risk. So if you're in the slight risk, you can't rule out the possibility for seeing some strong bands. You may not be in the enhanced risk, which is the highest probability or the highest risk, but you're still in a slight risk, which is a level 2 out of the 3 as our highest. So we are seeing that really, really good chance though for tornadoes. Mainly for hail and winds. There's a lower probability for tornadoes and a slight risk. And then the marginal, that dark green, we had that all the way, extending all the way to the Great Lakes and north central plains there in that dark green. There in the marginal, you'll be expecting some pop-up bands, maybe some smaller severe weather cells, but they won't be too severe, producing they don't have a good probability producing tornadoes, hail, and winds. Speaking of the probabilities of tornadoes and all of that, we're going to be checking out the probability for tornadoes here. There's a 5% chance. Really, I can't rule out the possibility for 10% chance, but of course, that's also not super duper likely. But I mean, I won't be surprised if that actually happens generally for this general area right here and that I circled. That is maybe where we could maybe possibly have a 10% chance if we do have one being issued. But that 5% chance is our highest probability, and that's going to be including those areas in enhanced risk. So Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Iowa, and far eastern South Dakota there on the border with Minnesota. There is where we have our highest probability for a tornado, and we also have a very widespread 2% chance, which is where we have a slight risk. So really our biggest threat really is that hail threat. We actually have a 30% significant risk there for general areas in the Midwest. So we have a 30% chance at our highest risk, but we also have that SIG, or that's significant for parts of South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and the border with Iowa. So that 30% chance hasn't really entered Iowa, but the kind of significant, that significant highlighted area has actually entered the border with Wisconsin, or with Minnesota and Iowa. We also have that very widespread 15% chance there in the yellow. That's all the way from Nebraska to Michigan, where we have, of course, that slight risk, and then that 5% chance for hail all the way in the general areas where we have that marginal. And also the wind threat there is also the 30% chance, but not a significant risk. So we have a 30% chance for winds though. So could be seeing some strong wind gusts, severe weather related and non-severe weather related. So it's definitely going to have some maybe uprooted trees, tree limbs all over the place, maybe some down trash cans, anything like that. Any loose objects, could expect them to be moved. That's going to be for parts of Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota there in that dark red there. And we have also a general widespread all the way in that 5% chance. So generally we have a very widespread for wind and hail for tomorrow's severe weather event. And then on day 3, we have a very widespread slight risk all the way from South Dakota and Colorado to New Jersey. So we also have a super duper widespread slight risk and general risk for tomorrow. We have multiple states there. We'll be talking about that later, more into tomorrow. As we get closer to the severe weather. As we check out that NAM3 model here, the really very detailed radar here, we're going to be checking out the Midwest. As we see, we have these pop-up bands developing near South Dakota and Minnesota. In those general areas, we have the slight risk. Really, I did not expect an enhanced risk for South Dakota. These bands don't seem super duper severe, but they are, I guess, based on the SPC, we have a 30% chance in those areas to actually produce hail and winds. But as we continue to move on there, we're going to be seeing these strong pop-up bands and strong linear bands that develop throughout parts of the Midwest and even parts of the plains. We'll be seeing these strong bands developing with the overday heating. Also seeing a lot of instability and just variable conditions for the severe weather to pop up. We are seeing some 80s in these general areas as well. Low pressure systems developing over central Wisconsin there. We'll be seeing quite the severe weather bands there. That'll be for parts of Green Bay, entering even Traverse City. And we also have those very strong bands for parts of the Midwest, like Nebraska and Iowa. You guys will start seeing those strong bands as well. Exactly why they did add that enhanced risk for Iowa and northern Iowa, because look at those very powerful bands likely producing tornadoes, hail, and winds. Of course, hail seems to be the primary threat with winds and then tornadoes after that, but hail is definitely that primary threat. And we have very widespread bands across these areas, not just one big band. It's going to be multiple rows and multiple waves of bands across parts of the Midwest, which is exactly why I had that very long-lasting threat today or tomorrow, and including parts of Wednesday. And then those bands will kind of die down a little bit. They maybe cap will maybe move in a little or kind of come in as a factor. But I mean, really, generally, we're not going to be seeing super duper high cap, which means these won't like cap out or fall apart there. So I mean, definitely seeing, like I said, favorable conditions. Now let's go and check out the CAPE values here on the pivotal weather. So we have very, actually decent CAPE values. Of course, CAPE values doesn't mean anything unless really high CAPE values doesn't mean anything when you have very high CAPE or cap. Sorry. But when you have very high CAPE values and also low cap, that means you definitely have a very good threat for some strong severe weather events likely that same day. So as we look at the CAPE values for in the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, we do actually have some decent numbers here at the 5,100 joules per kilogram there. As you see, we have the marginal tornado threat and also the very generally weak cap there in the general area. We have an 11 on the supercell composite parameter, so also a really a medium threat for seeing some or probably for seeing some supercells. Also going to be seeing those higher numbers for that border with Minnesota and South Dakota, which is most likely why also that factor where the SPC added that enhanced risk. As you see, not really seeing a tornado threat in the general area, seeing more of a severe weather threat. And that's going to be mainly that hail and winds. That's why you don't really see that tornado, that super high tornado threat for South Dakota. And also, as you see, a lower threat on a lower number on the supercell composite parameter for South Dakota. But as we gradually move a bit more, or the Minnesota border, sorry, not just general South Dakota. And as we now get later into tomorrow, kind of mid-morning there, kind of numbers do die down a little bit and are seeing the higher amounts of energy. We are seeing good numbers up to 2,000 joules per kilogram there. But as we now move in the overnight hours in between Tuesday there, late Tuesday and early Wednesday, these numbers skyrocket there. And these numbers are super high here, generally speaking these numbers are generally high, but obviously they're not super rare, but decent numbers here, or not decent, they're more than decent. So let's go ahead and check out these numbers on the Midwest region here. As you see, we are seeing these very widespread high numbers across parts of Kansas there, all the way to parts of near Lake Michigan. So we will be seeing up to 6,000 sorry, 5,600 joules per kilogram there for parts of Minnesota. Of course, that is where we have that tornado threat there. We actually have a 2.1 on the STP, or a significant tornado parameter there. And then also supercell composite parameter of 17, which is actually a very good number there. A medium threat there. And also seeing some good numbers there for parts of Iowa, which is where also the reason why we added that enhanced risk, up to 5,600 joules per kilogram there, but seeing more of a severe weather threat. That's because it's northwestern Iowa and north central Iowa is where we have that tornado threat. But as you see, very, very high numbers in general for the overnight hours there for Tuesday into Wednesday. And then those numbers do die down. We still would have maybe a marginal, even a slight risk for some of these areas, or sorry, a marginal for some of these areas. But I mean, numbers won't be impressive. Let's check out the superset composite parameter quickly here. This won't really last much longer there. See, we aren't seeing impressive supercell composite parameters numbers for into the early hours into Tuesday. Seeing a 9, seeing a 11, that's not too high really. Once you get past the 20, past the 20 is considered high for the supercell composite parameter. But I mean, we don't really get to those super high numbers really, or those high numbers for until really later into Tuesday in the day. For parts of Minnesota, we'll see a 22 on the supercell composite parameter there, a tornado threat. We have a 6 on the SCP or STP. So as you see, Minnesota's definitely maybe will have that biggest tornado probability just based on all the numbers. And as we get into Wisconsin, we'll have really a highest number of a 15 on the supercell composite parameter. There we will actually have a 3 on the tornado parameter, but really it looks like Minnesota definitely has could maybe get hit the hardest based on all the numbers. Let's go and check out the wind shear though to see exactly if we have that shear in place. We do actually have a shear flow, low level jet moving in, so we are going to be seeing a lot of shear actually to the east of where we'll see the worst severe weather. But we will see a decent amount of shear for parts of the western Great Lakes or parts of the Midwest. So we do actually have the shear in place. Could be seen with the 54 knots and the highest around 63 knots there in the higher atmosphere. So it won't be impressive amount of shear like we saw on the Easter outbreak or later in April. But I mean, we are going to be seeing a bit more shear than we have been seeing in May. We don't really have too many severe weather outbreaks in May. Maybe 1 or 2 that were really bad, but many of the May severe weather events did not have any shear in place like it did in April. But we'll have a decent amount of shear here. I mean, it's not impressive, but into Wednesday we do have a lot more shear. So Wednesday is exactly where we have that super widespread slight risk coming. I mean, we're going to be seeing really decent numbers of shear in these general areas. And also, last thing we'll be looking at is the temperatures. As you see, like I said, we're going to be seeing really favorable conditions, and also these overday heating. We're going to be seeing our 80s in parts of the Midwest. So you're probably thinking, oh, it's actually June. We are seeing 80s. We're going to be seeing up to 86, parts of even almost 90 degrees for parts of Wisconsin, actually reaching 90 degrees for the border with Wisconsin and Michigan, and in that little Minnesota area. But we are seeing very warm temperatures in these areas, so very favorable conditions for severe weather to develop in parts of the north central plains and the Midwest. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, though. It was a rather short video, but we are going to continue to monitor this, or I'm going to continue to monitor the severe weather closely. Of course, if we have any major updates on the SCP or anything like that, I will let you guys know. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and bye, guys.